Hey, welcome to 1FG Archives here on YouTube. This episode is Just Chatting Volume 6, and we're going to be continuing my top 25 games at all time. We have reached the top 10. Today we're going to be discussing number 10, 9, and 8. So let's jump in. Okay, first and foremost, I actually did have reviews written for all three of these games, but unfortunately I lost my number 10. So I'm kind of just going to ad-lib, that one along. Um, but anyway, so we're going to jump right into it. So at number 10 is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I just talked about earlier on the previous episode how Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest was my second favorite Castlevania game, so you knew that this one was coming up, or another Castlevania game had to be coming up in the list somewhere. Well, here you go. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. This is the game that defined the term Metroidvania. It was just so well done, platforming. It gave the whole new adventure scene to Castlevania. You had the protagonist be an Alucard this time instead of a Belmont. You know, the graphics of it were top notch, sound effects. But the biggest thing that I really liked about it was when they added the voiceovers for the characters to the game. And now there are two different versions of the game. If the original PlayStation version when it came out, and then a year later it was actually released on the Saturn, the Sega Saturn, which added a few extra bonus little content to it, a few extra rooms and all that, but extra items and all that. I mean, what wait, it's like having an expansion pack sort of like to it, but and a lot of people didn't really care for the Saturn version as much. They felt there was a lot more slowdown and everything. But in all fairness, I think that the Saturn version was the more superior one. Just my opinion. But I actually prefer to play that. I actually own both versions of the game. I have my PlayStation and Sega Saturn versions. Um, I do prefer to play the Saturn. That's just me, as I just said. But overall, the other experience that I really like about it is just even that they were able to change, like they put so many like graphics in the game for just like even Alucard, how you can get a different, every time you get a different upgrade, your character changes. There's even boots that make you taller, just by slightly, just a little bit. The shields are all different. The weapons are all different looking when you slash with them and stuff. It's not just a continuous, slash motion with a sword or an axe or whatever it may be, a rod, those kind of things. And then there's also spells on top of that. I mean, you just gotta get the spell books and then unlock them over time and everything. And then as you explore the castle, it's like then you get the whole inverted castle too, which just even added more difficulty to the game because that inverted castle is not easy by any means. It's the same exact map, it's just flipped, upside down, and it makes the game that much more interesting and how you be able to progress through some of those battles and everything else. I mean, I will say that the PlayStation version was a little bit on the easier side compared to the Saturn. Because there is a battle when you get to the midpoint of the game where you actually have to beat Maria, instead of just, you go walk in. I think in the PlayStation version, you have to just basically just walk to the middle area. Then, or when you get up to the tower, or when you get to the middle section of the game, there's a battle with Maria, and she's a pain. She's an absolute pain. I don't know how many times it took me a few times to get used to what she does, and even then, it's kind of like a little bit random, when you fight her. And here's the other thing with the Saturn version: not only do you get a couple extra rooms and stuff like that along the map, but straight from the get go, you have access to three playable characters. You have Alucard and Richter, but now you also have Maria as a playable character that you can go through the entire game with. So it just, little things like that just give you little add-ons and stuff to make the game even more. Yes, there is a little bit more slowdown. Maybe the graphics might not be as clean as on the PlayStation version, as I said, but it's still the version I prefer to play. And overall, the last thing I'm going to touch on before we move on to number 9 is the music. I don't know how what you know. Every single Castlevania game just has an amazing, amazing soundtrack. I can't stress that enough. And this one, in this game in particular, yeah, it's just it blew me away. I mean, still listen to the soundtrack to this day, many years, 20 plus years later, after this game has come out, and I'm still listening to this every day. Lost Painting is probably my favorite track of the entire album, but or Dracula's Castle. Um, but I could listen to the whole thing, and I never get tired of it. It's just, and it's not just this Castlevania game either. I mean, Castlevania 1, Castlevania 2, Castlevania 3, Castlevania 4, all of those games just had incredible soundtracks. And even some of them, even the ones that are more the modern ones, Lords of Shadow, all of them have really, really good soundtracks to them. And it never ceases to amaze me. Even with like every area that you explore in the game, the soundtrack is right there with it. If you listen to the music, like when you get to the Marble Gallery, it sounds like it's something that you would listen to in the background as you're walking through a library or something. When you're out to the outer wall, it sounds like they just did it spot on with all the music in this game. And so credit to them for all of that. But the one more thing I want to touch on why they like the Saturn version a little bit too is some of the extra items. There's actually a cloak that you can get in the game that literally changes colors like every few seconds. And it just randomizes the colors, the color schemes and stuff. How they're able to program that into it is just it's amazing. I'll be walking through my any corridor, whatever, and all of a sudden my cape goes from green and brown to like pink and purple and stuff. And it just randomly does that, and it changes consistently as you're walking through the castle and stuff. It's really, really cool, and I thought it was a little extra, a little cool thing about it. Okay, so that is my number 10 game of all time. So now for the rest of these other two games, I actually have written reviews for them, so I'm going to be reading off. I actually have the whole things on my phone right here. I'm going to be reading off on those reviews. So, but moving on to number 9 now, it is Nights into Dreams. This masterpiece of a game is just phenomenal. I mean, I'll read the review in a moment, but before I do that, actually I think I cover that in the extra review. Yeah, whatever. We'll just go ahead and read the review here. All right. Ever since the Sega Saturn was released back in 1995, I have always wanted one. It wasn't until this past year, almost 29 years after the original release, that I finally got my hands on one. There are a lot of games that stood out for me on the console, but when I saw Nights into Dreams, I was immediately sold. There was just something special about that I could not explain, other than I knew this was a game I wanted to play. When I bought my Sega Saturn last year, Nights into Dreams was one of the first games I purchased complete in box and in great condition on eBay, with a price tag to go with it, I might add, just like a lot of the top games on the platform. However, that being said, I decided to, instead of trying it out once it arrived, I would go live for my first impressions on live stream. While live, the viewers could see and were even commenting how much they saw I was enjoying myself playing the game. Even after the stream was over, I found myself still playing the game, and I was having so much fun with it, and the rest is history. So getting into the game itself, I will admit that this game is not something that someone would understand right away on what you are doing, and this game is not for everyone. But for me, once I figured things out, the true experience began. With some stunning visuals and amazing little cutscenes this platform could offer, Nights draws you as you continue through the game. One thing to note, in order to progress to the fourth area of both Clarice and Elliot, you have to get the minimum of B rank on their respective first 3 levels. And that's just one of the reasons that makes this game so good. Each level contains 4 parts. Each part you complete, you are graded on your score based on stars, orbs, and links you collected and or go through. In each part, you collect 20 orbs to take out the container holding the Idia. Doing this will double your points, which is a huge help until you go to the Idia Palace. However, you are on a timer and must free the Idia and take it to the palace to move on to the next area before the time runs out. If you run out of time, Knights turns back into Elliot or Clarice, and you have to make it to the palace and turn back into Knights. Oh, and your score becomes 0 too if this happens. If you don't change back into Knights within a certain amount of time, it's game or night over, and you have to restart the level. Oh, and did I mention that after the fourth part of each level, there's a boss too? The faster you beat the boss, the higher the multiplier you receive, which can really affect your overall score at the end of the level to try to get a B rank or higher. I must say, some of these bosses are tough, so finishing them off fast can be tricky, but well rewarding. One thing I must mention too is that if you play this game on the Saturn, I strongly recommend having the OEM round controller for this. I was lucky that I was gifted one, thank you so much to you know who. And man, it made controlling Knights that much better and easier. Sega originally released Nights into Dreams as a bundle with the controller. You'll thank me later. So why is Nights into Dreams number 9? This game reminded me so much of the rush I had growing up as a kid, playing high score games and having to get my game in fast as my parents couldn't stay at the arcade forever. The rush you get when looping through the parts of each level, like, do I have enough time for one more loop for a higher score? This happens a lot and can have a huge impact on the outcome if you are wrong. Let's also mention how cute Knights looks too. Yes, it looks like a jester, but the face and eyes just add to all the magic this game has to offer. It's simple yet challenging at the same time. Flying through the level feels like you are free to roam as you complete each area and level. The visuals, as I mentioned, are simply amazing on the Saturn, and that make everything easy and cheerful to the eyes to see. The soundtrack is also very fitting for the type of gameplay this game has. I even own a copy of that too. Overall, there are still several other games that I feel that have a bigger impact on me personally, but so much can be said about this one. My number 9 game of all time is Nights into Dreams. And I can't stress that enough because the whole freedom aspect of it. You can kind of just float around, fly around. I honestly could do the same level over and over again and never get tired of it. It's just one of those experiences where you're just floating through open areas and stuff, and you're just, finding loops and going through them, and finding orbs and collecting stars to get your points up and all that. It honestly, it's freedom. Yeah, you're on a time limit, kind of stuff. And that's why what I was saying about the rush and everything, having to go through all of that. Do I have enough time to do another loop? All that comes into play, but that's what adds to the experience of this game. I actually have, how much of a fan I actually am of this game. I actually have a Knight's hat, I'm not going to put it on, but I actually, again, a huge shout out to Save and Continue and Santa Clara who ended up having those hats. Ended up getting 3 of those hats in, and I was able to get my hands on one. So I thought that was pretty cool. But anyway, moving on. There was another part of this Nights into Dreams that I think you should also know. It's Christmas Nights into Dreams. This was actually a free release by Sega in their magazine years ago, and it basically it's only 2 levels. It's one each level, but it has a whole entire Christmas theme and everything as you're flying through the levels and everything, and you're trying to get the high score. But the cool thing about that is there's unlockable little things that you can get, like pictures, galleries, and stuff like that you can unlock, more tunes, all that kind of stuff. It's really, really, really cool. And it makes you think like, oh, hey, I'm not gonna, what is it? It's basically like it's like there's a whole at the end once you finish both levels, and it has a nice little like Christmas cutscene too, which just adds to the charm of the whole entire game. Um, it's just an amazing like free roaming game. Now, when you get to the bosses, as I said, it kind of gives you a little bit of a you know you really don't have much time to kind of figure it out. you know, so do you have to go back through it? So it's a real challenging aspect of it, because there are, as you get later in like the later levels of each character, they are challenging. I'm not gonna lie. They will make you think about what you're doing and all that stuff. So do check this game out. They also made a release on the Nintendo Wii. Journey into Dreams, I think is what it was called. Let's see here. Hang on. Yeah, it's this one here. Yeah, Journey of Dreams. Sorry. So they did release this on the Wii. This is actually a sealed copy of it, so I'm not going to open it up anytime soon. But I actually haven't played that one yet myself. But I'm gonna have to actually find an actual copy of it that I can actually play on my Wii. But nonetheless, Nights into Dreams, Christmas Nights into Dreams, and that is going to be a tradition for me on this page, where every Christmas I'm going to be actually playing Nights into Dreams, Christmas Nights into Dreams, that is, just because it's just so much fun. You know, it's, I said, if you've never even heard of the game, please do check it out. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone's heard about Castlevania Symphony of the Night, but not so many people hear about Nights into Dreams. You know, being such a an impact on it. Even though I'm part of the Retro Gaming League that I'm a part of, we're actually looking into next season to adding some Saturn games. Unfortunately, I told them, I said Nights would be an extremely hard game to judge because it's going to be based off of progression most of the time, and there's going to be a lot of people that probably are not even going to get there. I'm not nothing against anybody, of course, but there's going to be a lot of people are just going to be like, what am I doing in this thing, you know, type of thing, and if they're just not going to get into it. I have that. I've had several people ask me when I've streamed this game, ask me what is going on. I have no clue, and I have to sit there and explain, you know, what the rules are, you know, and how the game works. And it's just, you know, I don't mind that. You know, that's perfectly fine. Especially on one of the games in my personal top 10, you know, I really don't have a problem explaining that to people. You know, I always have a smile on my face when I stream the game. So you'll definitely see me streaming that again in the future for sure. Maybe actually beating it on stream, but we'll see. All right, so enough about Nights, I think. Went on that one for quite a while. All right, but now let's move on to the final game of this episode, and it is our number 8 game, and that is Sonic CD. Yes, that is correct. Sonic CD. My favorite Sonic game, hands down. I'm not going to lie. Give this game a chance, okay? The one thing to note is that there are, well, as I'll get into that here, but I got my review ready to go, so let's go ahead and get this going. I must admit, I never owned a Sega CD until this past year. In fact, the first time I was ever able to play Sonic CD was on the Sega Sonic Gems collection on the Nintendo GameCube. Now, mind you, this was a Sonic game I have wanted to play for a very long time, but when I pressed the start button for the first time on my GameCube controller, it just didn't feel the same as a normal Sonic game. Past and future signs? What was this nonsense? Also, let's not forget about those wonderful special stages to get the time stones. While I still pushed myself to play it all the way through, I found myself extremely aggravated and disappointed more often than I wanted to be. I had even told myself once I did finally finish the game that I would never play this crap game again. Well, if history knows anything about me, it knows this not to be true. So what happened to make me do a complete 180 on this game? Let me just start by saying that there's so much more this game has to offer than just speeding through as fast as you can. Of course, just like most Sonic games, there are special stages where you have to collect Chaos Emeralds, or in this case, Time Stones, to get to the true ending of the game. However, in Sonic CD, there is a second way to get that best ending. Locate the enemy generator in each of the first 2 acts of each level by traveling into the past or future to destroy them. This is obviously the tougher route, but allows you to explore more of the game rather than just blitz through it. An added bonus if you succeed in destroying the 2 generators, the 3rd act will give you a quote-unquote good future version of the level as you battle the evil Dr. Robotnik. Otherwise, you get the quote-unquote bad future version instead. Also, if you do collect all 7 time stones, all 3rd acts from that point on will be a quote-unquote good future. It took a while for this game to grow on me, but the more I played it, the more I understood it. This game was more about exploration, but I do like the fact that you have the option to speed through it too. Looking at each level as a whole, they are huge. This made finding the enemy generators a real challenge, especially because you had to use the time post to locate them. In the early stages of the game, being able to time warp was a lot easier and compared to the later ones, which added to the overall difficulty. At times, I also found myself going through the game with ease, but then out of nowhere, I was losing a life consistently. The overall challenge factor, especially if you are going after all the time stones, is very consistent throughout the game. I have often found myself getting frustrated at some point every time I play it, but is that really a bad thing? In this case, my answer is a solid no. In this case, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, repeating myself. Sonic CD will definitely make you work hard to get through it. Another aspect I want to talk about is the soundtrack. As most of us know, there are two versions of the soundtrack, the international and the US versions. When the game was originally going to be released, the developers at Sega of America were very unhappy with the tunes on the international version, so months after the original international release, Sega of America was able to finish producing the music that you hear on the game today in time for a Christmas release in 1993. Personally, I like the US version more, but that doesn't mean that the other version didn't have some great tunes either. Title Tempest in the present time is probably my favorite on both. However, one other note I must say is that the infamous drowning tune that we're all familiar with was omitted in this game, which I personally welcomed with open arms. That tune has caused me much anxiety and many sleepless nights even to this day. Being able to go through Title Tempest and not having to hear it was a big sigh of relief. Finally, let me touch on the fact that the game itself looks absolutely beautiful. The sprites, backgrounds, and pixels are very colorful and bright, which is very pleasing to the eyes. Being the only Sonic game that was on the platform, Sonic CD delivers on all fronts visually. So why is CD number 8 on my list? I must say it has to be the overall challenge this game offers, let alone it includes Sonic, a franchise character that always has been one of my favorites. And let's not forget about that awesome short intro movie that never gets old. That intro is what really helps get the juices flowing as you begin to play the game, whether picking up where you left off or starting anew. While I know there are people who would disagree with me about this game, for me though, my personal number 8 game of all time is Sonic CD. It's just, the overall experience of Sonic CD, you can't just, blitz through the thing. Play the game as a whole, go through the special stages. I will admit that the special stages definitely take some getting used to. In fact, it can be a little bit, inconsistent at times because of the scaling, of the running through the stages, trying to jump and hit the UFOs and everything. There are times when I'll be like on this side of the thing and the UFO is like over here, but somehow I clip it. And then there's other times when we're like this and I jump and I miss it. So as I said, there's a little bit of inconsistencies, and then you're also on a time limit on the special stages, which you can get more time. It's there's at 20 seconds on the clock. There's a UFO that will appear in the middle of the stage that you can hit or you can get, and it'll give you more time. So you can make those things last as long as you want, and trying to go out and get all the rest of the UFOs and blow them up, type of thing, so you can get the time stones. But overall, I can't stress enough to please give this game a shot. It was released in between, Sonic 1. It was like basically around the time, it was after Sonic 2, so it was kind of like a sequel, but it wasn't really at the same time. I think on the main timeline for Sonic, it kind of was just like, okay, they brought in Amy Rose. Metal Sonic was kind of was also a main protagonist or a villain in this game, not protagonist, but as I said, they brought in Amy Rose, a little girl, a hedgehog, to kind of give Sonic a little female companion, and that's the whole thing. It's like for me, even too, just having a physical copy of the game, I'll always cherish this thing regardless. I have a Sega CD. I have all of that. So it was a no-brainer. It was one of the first games I bought for, even with all of that nonsense that I was, completely had to do a 180 on this game. Yeah, and that's the whole thing. That was part of the reason why I didn't stop playing this game. You know, when I finished it the first time, I just felt like there was something I was missing. When I finished it, yeah, I was frustrated. Yes, and yeah, I'm never gonna play this crap game again. But when I started looking into it a little bit further, I was like, hey, you know what? This isn't so bad. When I understood it, what it was trying to do. You always will have in any kind of game, you can always have the option to speed run it. You always have the option to just go right through it without the true ending and stuff like that. But for me, that's one of the things that I like to try to do sometimes, is actually get the true ending to the game. If I don't, well, hey, it happens. And I'm not going to get it every single time, especially if I'm just going for the time stones and not trying to locate the enemy generators and all that stuff. And for the record, I said past or future. All of the enemy generators in the game are in the past. So you have to go to the past to create a good future, for if that makes sense. That kind of thing. But overall, I think that, Sonic CD, if you've never played it before, please do check it out. It's the same thing with all three of these games here. Check them all out, because they're a lot of fun. They really are. And for how and this is the funny thing about it. I actually had to revise my top 10 list like a couple times, because once I got my hands on Nights into Dreams, I was literally putting that as like very high on my list. But after I kind of like thought about it, I said, no, it's definitely still in my top 10 games. It's just like Sonic CD, um, and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Well, actually, no. Castlevania was pretty much always my number 10. I didn't think I was ever going to put it any higher than number 10. At most, maybe 9 at some point. But regardless, I just don't think that Knights was such a huge impact on my whole entire gaming experience and all the video games that I've played in my life, including Sonic CD as well. Um, it's just, you have to let these games grow on you a little bit. You can't just jump into and expect, oh, at least some of these games, not all of them. Some of them, there are games that I've just played are just absolute trash, and everybody's had that experience. Um, but for me, you know, some of these games, it's like, as I said, when I started playing Sonic CD, but it just, I felt in the back of my head, I felt like there was just something in this that I was just missing out on. And as soon as I kind of discovered the enemy generators and all that, it just changed my entire opinion of it. I said, so this is what this game is about. This is what they're trying to do. As I said, you do have the option to go blitz through it just like any of these other games. But with this one, it just made things a lot better, once you understood it. And that's the greatness of these games. It's not just about one way of getting through it sometimes. It's just how you want to progress about it. It's like playing like a Legend of Zelda game or a Metroid game. Which order do you want to do the bosses? Which direction do you want to go? There's so many ways that you can go about doing this, and that just adds to the overall experience of the game. And that's one thing I want to stress out. I want to put a lot of stress about a lot of these games that are in my top 25. It's all about the experience. It's not just about the game itself. It's what you get out of it. Like, I know I've talked about Metroid Rogue Dawn several times, but um, that to me is just the overall experience. Like, when you finish the game and you're just kind of just sit in your chair and you're just like, wow, or on your sofa or wherever you're playing your games, it's just, you just get that wow factor. That's what these games are about to me. And especially when I finally understood Sonic CD and all that, and when I did get the good ending and all that, that's just how when I finally kind of figured it out, and I finally was able to do those and everything, it was a wow factor. That's how I was able to get the complete 180, of the whole thing. And it's the same thing with Castlevania Symphony of the Night. The whole thing about finding how to get the inverted castle and how to proceed. Oh my gosh, wait, I thought I was done with this game. There's a whole nother castle. That whole wow factor of it too. And Yeah, one thing I didn't touch on with the I think I may have touched on a little bit, was the voice acting. I preferred the voice acting on Castlevania Symphony of the Night on the English version. I did not like the Japanese voiceovers in this game whatsoever. I really liked the English dubbed version of it, which to me, a lot of times the Japanese, for in my opinion, the Japanese language, I love it. I love it very much. And a lot of times when I listen to these games, I prefer the Japanese versions of it because it just, especially you play a game like Shenmue or something where the characters are Japanese and stuff, and it just has more. I prefer to have the subtitles on and let them speak in Japanese, that kind of thing. But in this case, I prefer the English dubbed um, version of it. The PlayStation version. There is an actual update to the Saturn version. If you can look online, they actually do have even physical copies of the updated version, which actually has the English dubbed version now on the Saturn. So you just have to look around for it. It is out there, or even just the ROM for it. It's out there. Because the one that I have is just clear. It was only released in Japan, so on the Saturn, so um, it's all in Japanese, and all the language and everything is all in Japanese. But on the updated version, everything is in English. There is an English everything, the language, the the dialogue, all the even like the menu items, it's all in English. For the Saturn and stuff. So it's all there. You just have to really, as I said, you just have to kind of look for it. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed this my top 8, 9, and 10 games of all time. Next episode we're going to be continuing it on. We're just going to do the next 2 games on the list. We're going to do 6 and 7. Um, if you're on the Facebook side, you already know what my top 2 through 10 are. I still haven't completely written my number 1 yet. But nonetheless, I'm going to be doing that very soon in this future as I continue with these videos, these episodes with my top 25 games of all time as we scroll down the list to the very top. So anyway, do check me out on facebook.com/oneforsakengaming, Instagram with the same name, and as well as twitch.tv/oneforsakengaming, and of course right here at 1FG Archives here on YouTube. So that's it for this episode, and we will see you next time.